Namaskar and welcome to another episode of What Does This Data Say? Now, in today's episode, we'll try to find out after all that what happened in Maharashtra, which is the next state or states that BJP is going to target, and whether we can find a data driven formula which predicts which state is going to be on the hit list of BJP. Of course, politics is not mathematics or statistics or chemistry and not even moral science these days. If we go back and look at the data, what happened in Maharashtra is not going to be a surprise for many of us. In fact, it was the Shivsena which first betrayed the BJP on the issue of chief ministership. The Shivsena had fought the election along with BJP as part of the NDA, and later on it jumped the ship and entered into an unholy alliance with Congress and the NCP. Now, what we always thought is that the Congress or the NCP is going to pull the plug of the Shivsena government. But that didn't happen, and in fact, the enemy came from within. This government lasted for about 2.5 years. And not so long ago, there were two more governments which met the same fate. The first one, if you remember, was Karnataka, where the BJP targeted the Congress MLAs. BJP needed only about 20 more MLAs to form the government, and that was very easy for them. The Congress JDS government lasted only 15 months. And the other government which fell to the BJP was the Madhya Pradesh government. The elections happened in 2018 November, and the government changed in 2020 March after about 19 months. The BJP needed about 15 more MLAs, and they targeted the Jyotiraditya Scindia camp. So if I ask you, when is it when when the BJP is going to strike in a certain state, I think the answer is very simple. In an opposition ruled state, whenever the difference between BJP and the majority halfway mark in an assembly is less, BJP is going to strike. And then it is not a question of if, it is only a question of when. So the question remains, what is this number less? For this, I have looked at the data of 18 Indian states in their last assembly election, and you'll be surprised. I have come out with a very simple formula which, sitting at home, if you compute, you can tell what is going to happen in the months to come in any state, whether it's a BJP ruled state or an opposition state. So using this formula, let us find out which state or states are next in line. So watch this episode till the end, because you are going to be surprised at the simplicity of this formula and the predictability of the BJP. I call this number the BJP's strike index. Now how do we compute it is, after an election happens in any state, takes the seats which have been won by BJP and its allies and then subtract the opposition seats from that number. Then thereafter you divide this number by the total seats in the assembly. As you notice, it's a number which measures the difference of the seats between BJP and the opposition. However, this number indicates more than just that. In an opposition ruled state, this index will say if BJP can form a government in the months to come, and if so, when is it going to be likely that such an event takes place. Now, this strike index which you have got, just convert it to a percentage, and you will notice that the range of the strike index is between -100 to +100. A positive SI implies that BJP and its allies are ruling the state, whereas a negative SI implies the opposition and its allies are ruling that particular state. Let me run you through with two examples. I'll take Karnataka and the more recent one, Maharashtra. We'll compute the SI as when the elections happened in this state, and then what is the SI as on date. So in Karnataka, When the elections happened in 2018, the BJP had 104 seats, whereas the opposition of BJP at that time, which is the Congress and the JDS, together had 117 seats. So I subtract this number divided by 224, which is the number of seats in the assembly. This gives me a number of 5.8%. I round it off to 6. Now, after the change of government, which happened, then the BJP got 122 seats. The opposition to BJP had 102. We subtract this, divided by 224, we get a figure of 9%. In the first case, you notice it was minus 6%, which means the opposition to BJP was in power. And when the government was toppled, the SI became positive, plus 9%. The second example is more recent, that is of Maharashtra. Now, in Maharashtra, the last elections happened in 2019. The assembly seats were 228. So, at that time, the BJP had 105 seats. The Mahavikas Aghadi had 154. We subtract and divide it, we get a figure of minus 17%. Minus means it's the BJP opposition in power. Now, after the BJP strike, the SI today becomes plus 16%. 165 seats went to BJP and the breakaway Shivsena, 118 to the MVA, divide by 228, and so that's how we get 16%. So that's a very simple way to calculate the strike index. But having got the strike index, now how do you analyze it to make some sense out of it? For this, I have made a BJP's strike index chart. Get the number and then see where the number lies in this chart, and then read the explanation below it. So let's start from the left. Anything above 40% are states where BJP is in power. I call them the truly our states. BJP is well entrenched, it has a good majority. Come a little left, then the index values is plus 10 to plus 30%. These are again states where BJP is in power but with lesser majority. So it will remain always vigilant and keep a check on its MLA that they should not switch sides. Zero is a little special case. I'll just explain that in a moment. And then we come to the negative side. Now, negative minus 10 to minus 30 is what I call the BJP's strike zone. If any state has a SI in this range, then you can be sure that sooner or later it is going to switch side. The BJP makes itself ready to strike hard in such states. Minus 40 to minus 50, the purple region, the opposition to BJP is little better off. It has a much more majority, so BJP cannot really do the strike in the way they do it. However, they will always keep an eye open for an opportunity. Minus 60 to minus 100 are states where the opposition is fully in control and they have a very good majority. The BJP leaves them alone, but it has its own way to keep the opposition leaders engaged. By engaged, I mean there are various ways in which today BJP can engage these leaders. As I said, I have computed the strike index for 18 major states in India as and when the last assembly election happened in those states. So let us see where each of these 18 states mapped onto this strike index chart. Again, we start from the left. In the 40 to 60% range, we have UP, Himachal Pradesh. Then in the yellow region, 10 to 30%, we have Haryana, Assam, Gujarat, and Bihar. Then in the strike zone, we had Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan in the purple zone. between 40 to -40 to -50, we have Tamil Nadu and West Bengal, and then -60 onwards up to 100%. We have Orissa, Kerala, Andhra, Punjab, Delhi, and Telangana. Now, when the strike index is zero, it actually means that both the opposition and BJP have equal number of seats. In such states, the BJP has to get hold of an ally. The case in point here was Bihar, where such a case had happened. And that is the reason why BJP, if there is an ally they can get hold of, holds them with kids' gloves. Nitish Kumar today can get away with lot of things which the BJP doesn't like. For one, the BJP was in majority in this state and they still chose to make a CM which is from its ally. So whenever the SI is zero, you can be rest assured that BJP's ally is going to extract its pound of flesh. Now the same data, when I plot it in a graph, it gives a very nice perspective of the whole issue. So this is the strike index of BJP and its allies post the election in that particular state. This is the zero line, the zero strike index line. Anything negative, the opposition is in power. So first thing you notice is that after the election happened, the opposition was in power in 12 states, whereas BJP was in power in 6 states. In fact, the total number of MLAs which the BJP had got was 1078. Added to that, its allies, it became 1374 out of a total of 3350 MLAs, which is about 40% of the total, which means that 60% of the MLAs were against the BJP. Another point which I want to highlight is that on its own, the BJP had majority only in 3 states, which is UP, Himachal, and Gujarat. So after the elections happened in these states, BJP was not ruling half the country. That happened much later. So now I'll superimpose the strike zone onto the same graph. This shaded area represents the strike index from 0 to 30, and in this there are 4 states which fall: Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan. These states were always in the BJP striking zone after their respective elections. And it's true that we have seen action in all of these states. Something or the other has happened, and even in Rajasthan, there has been an attempt made. Now I'm going to show you the same strike graph as on July 2nd, 2022. After the elections happened in the state, 3-4 years have passed since then, and several things have happened. The governments have been toppled, there have been by-elections, there have been some crossovers, so all that is accounted for in this graph. So it is only now that BJP is ruling the 9 states out of the total of 18 which I have analyzed. The only single state left now in BJP strike zone is Rajasthan with a strike index of -26. The nearest to them is -36, which is Tamil Nadu, and thereafter -52, which is West Bengal. Now, the strongest party in opposition today remains Telangana with a strike index of 90%, -90%. And whereas for the BJP, the strongest party for the state for them is Uttar Pradesh, followed by Himachal Pradesh. And this is the reason I say that the game in Rajasthan is still not over. The last election held in that state was in 2018. The next election is little far away in December 2023. Now, as per the data, The BJP needs about 30 MLAs to stake a claim to form the government. And Sachin Pilot has said several times that he has the support of 30 MLAs. In November 2021, we have already seen that the Gehlot had to bow down to Sachin Pilot and had to accommodate five of his loyalists into the ministry. And one more thing for Telangana is that just after the elections were held, the strike index for Telangana was minus 79, and today it is minus 90, which means that over the years, Telangana TRS government has grown stronger. And that's one reason why the BJP will find it difficult to dislodge this government in the coming elections. So this brings us to the end of this episode. Just a couple of things more. Firstly, whether the strike index can tell you when a opposition government is going to fall. Let's check out this graph. Here I have plotted the state, the strike index, and in how many months the government was toppled. So Madhya Pradesh had a strike index of -4. It was the most vulnerable out of the four states. It was toppled in 19 months. Then we had Karnataka around -6. It went off in 15 months. Maharashtra had a strike index of -17. That means more MPs were required, and it took 30 months for the BJP to come back in power. Now, Rajasthan, we should see some action from the 40th month onward, which is already due. Its strike index is -21. Now, this is not a straightforward mathematical equation. This is just an indication. There is much more to it, and there is much more politics to it. As I said, the state nearest to the strike zone is Tamil Nadu with a strike index of -36. So theoretically, BJP cannot form a government here, but it is going to put this government in pressure. The only drawback is that its ally, the ADMK, today stands fragmented. The cross for the government to fall, the opposition needs 43 MLAs. However, it appears that something must be happening there because yesterday A. Raja had threatened the central government and has started raising the issue of autonomy. So some sort of pressure is on in Tamil Nadu already. You might be wondering, why have I taken the strike zone as 0 to -30 and not ±30? It's very simple. For the opposition today to pull out BJP MLA is just impossible. They are not in that position to topple a BJP government. If and when that happens, I will change the definition of the strike zone. So that's all in today's episode. Do write how you felt about it. I'll see you again next week. Till then, goodbye and namaskar.